was like, wow, that's a climb. How would you do it? And the answer was, if I knew how, why would we even talk to you? The difference in China is how the consumer has probably gone digital, not as a channel, but as a behavior. The discovery was happening on this channel. The interest generation was happening on this. So almost all parts of the funnel were being consumed on this particular channel, and we felt maybe it's worth a chance.
A very warm welcome to the Made in China podcast. We're sitting once again in Damian's office and we have a very nice view today. We have white clouds and a blue sky, and we can see the Oriental Pearl Tower here. And Sri is sitting with us in Damian's office. A very warm welcome to our podcast.
Thank you, Thomas, and thank you, Damian. I think it's going to be a lovely chat that we're going to have.
Yes, welcome also from my side, Sri. And now we will start actually with 3 quick questions.
Okay.
And the first one is, what was the last really great meal you had and where was it?
Oh, a great question. So I've spent about 10 years in Shanghai. I'm a big fan of Yunnan cuisine.
Okay.
And I found a very small little sleepy corner on, it's called Lotus Eatery. And it was fantastic Yunnan cuisine. And it's now suddenly become my top 5 places in Shanghai. It's not a Michelin star. It's not an expensive restaurant, but it's a small little sleepy corner Yunnan restaurant. And I think that's probably one of the top meals I've had in the longest period.
That's great. Send us the address later.
Yeah.
Question number 2. If you could have coffee with anyone, dead or alive, who would it be?
Oh, wow. That's an interesting question. Let me go to the world of superheroes and comics, and I'm a big fan. And I tend to read comics every once in a while to keep humble. I've just off a Iron Man comic, and he's been my big source of inspiration forever. So if I were to meet, I'd probably meet the real Iron Man, if there's one. I know there isn't one. But as a child, I was always absolutely enamored by a character who represents, like, he was smart, he was flamboyant, he's extremely witty, and there's something about him. And if I really want to meet someone, dead or alive, on a lighter side, it'll be Iron Man. But on a very, very inspirational side, because I'm a sports romantic, I'm a big fan of Muhammad Ali. My office has a massive poster of Muhammad Ali behind me. He inspires me. I would love to stand in front of him. I don't need to have a coffee or breakfast. Just look at him. Being in his presence would probably inspire me.
That's an interesting answer. Yeah, I'd love to meet the Iron Man too. That's fantastic. Well, what's a hobby you enjoy in your free time?
All right. So, okay, I probably have, say, 2 things. My original true love in free time was playing golf. I aspire to be a single handicap golfer at some point in my life, but every good round is followed by a horrible round. That game and sport has made me so humble in life. But off late, I've just picked up a new habit of long distance running. And yeah, I aspire to hopefully complete the 6-star majors by New York this year.
Damian, we need a quick ad break.
For what?
Now, by now, most people in the West have realized that innovation happens here in Asia, right? So whether it's your industry, e-commerce, whether it's automotive or AI, but the problem is they hear about it way too late. So I created Asia Bits. It's a daily newsletter that lets you grasp Asia's big moves in under 5 minutes every day.
Sounds great. Where do I find it?
So, you know how to find it, but for everyone who doesn't know, I will tell you, just sign up at our website. It's asiabits.com. Very easy to remember. The newsletter lands in your inbox Monday to Friday at 6 a.m. CET. And while you are still brewing your first coffee, we've already been working for 6 hours. With Asia Bits, you'll be the smartest person in the room, knowing today what others won't Google for another 2 weeks. We already have thousands of subscribers, including some very high-level German diplomats.
Well, Then let's go. asiabits.com, pick your language, and you are in.
Wow, yeah. So keep us updated. This is very, very interesting. And you also were talking about the Shanghai Marathon when you came here.
Yeah.
So we haven't even introduced you, but maybe you just do it yourself. That would be best. So what brought you to Shanghai, and what you have 20 years of international leadership experience. So what were the stages that brought you here?
Yeah. Good question. So let me try and go quickly on this one. So firstly, my name is Sriram Darbha, but everyone I know calls me either Sri or Darbha, but I'm good with that. I was born in India, raised in India, studied in India, started my journey in India, studied marketing in my as a major, and then I started my career in advertising, funnily enough, with orange hair, young aspirations of doing something cool in life. When half my friends were either doctors or engineers. I had a humble beginning there, but very quickly in my corporate journey, I had the great privilege of working for a company called Adidas. Now, like I said just before, I'm also a sports romantic at heart. So if I were to introduce myself, I would say during the work time, I'm a global executive with probably 2 decades plus experience. And while not at work, I'm a sports romantic at heart. And I was fortunate enough to be able to balance both these sides for last couple of decades with Adidas, both in India, started in India, then moved west towards Germany, where I was working both in region Europe, which was the biggest region back in the day, and in global, before moving to China in 2015 to set up, build, and grow our digital ambition for Adidas in China. So that's a little bit about me.
Yeah, that's, very interesting journey, particularly now 2015, you came to China, then now for Adidas as the senior vice president, correct? And that was a time when I've also realized, hey, e-commerce is picking up, right? And e-commerce is really a significant business and no one gets around it. So I founded actually our company here in 2017, right? And everyone wanted to go on Tmall, right? Alibaba and so on and so forth. So that was the time you came here. And then I think you must have been being tasked to open the Adidas and digital business in China. How was that initial situation, and what did you make out of it? Can you tell me about this journey?
Yeah, Damien, I think it's you take me back probably to the most pivotal moment of my professional career. And I'm happy to talk about the journey it took. First things first, yes, it was life-changing for me. It all started with a very small conversation that my mentor then and my manager said, you worked long enough in Germany, you worked long enough in working for European e-commerce, how about doing something transformational? Because I would have evolved into something more senior in Europe, but then the challenge that was thrown at me is like, if you really want to do something with your life, do something transformational, go to China and help build and scale e-com. The question I had was, okay, how big is the business? The answer was it's roughly around 10 million euros. I was like, okay, that's a good modest start. What's the ambition? And the answer that I got was it's at bare minimum, it should be $500 million. I was like, wow, that's a climb. How would you do it? And the answer was, if I knew how, why would we even talk to you? So, and that absolutely was a trigger point for me to say, you know what, here seems to be at least an ambition based on a country where the demographics make sense, the macroeconomic conditions made sense because the world was looking at China as a future growth engine back in the day. China represented probably 20-25% of several global brands' revenue, which was not the case for us. So the bigger numbers made sense. The question then pretty much for me was, how do I look at the bigger opportunity? What do I need to do gradually to build that, to leverage it? Fast forward 2020, we ended up with something that's much more than $500 million. We ended up at about $1 billion plus. So great memories. I wish I could remember each and every day what happened, but I fundamentally attribute that to my shift to China was like, there was guidance from my mentors. Second, There was a belief from the company that China represented growth opportunity. Third, China digital macroeconomically was at a stage where it was taking off. So it was a question of being at the right time, at the right place. And then from myself, it's about how did I surround myself with building the right people, right teams, right setups, right partners, and putting in place a plan. And I hate to use the word strategy, but I will use in this context, a right strategy to implement for the 5 years. And the rest is history, like they say it.
The first time you came to China was in 2008, right? The year of the Olympics. Mm-hmm. At that time, sports was not yet part of the lifestyle of the masses, right? It was like maybe for elite, for people who did it professionally. But nowadays, sports is part of almost everyone's lifestyle, everyday life. People in Shanghai, they jog, they do pickleball, they do golfing and whatever. So how did you experience this shift? I mean, you have been there on the pulse of this change.
Yeah. Firstly, again, 2008, I'll be absolutely honest with you, I came to see the Beijing Olympics as a tourist. So I probably had no understanding of the local insights or nuances. However, what I can clearly remember, 10 years back when I moved here, 15, I think what I observed, and I can tell you firsthand, was people still did sport. But let's be real about this, right? China was in 2008 Olympics, had the maximum number of gold medals in Beijing Olympics. Fact. So,
wow, I don't remember that, but I didn't look.
Yeah, but that you can't say it's not a sporting nation. First things first. Secondly, by the time I came 2015, it's not like sport is new, but individuals doing sport was an event in itself, but it was very different to what sport means today. If I have to broadly summarize how I see the difference between 15 and now, I think sport was probably a habit of few individuals doing it to probably for whatever reason, either they want to do it at a senior level, competitive level, or at a leisure level as a habit. That has transcended over the past decade into becoming a lifestyle. I think today's sport, we can safely assume that it's a community, it's a lifestyle, and more importantly, I think sport has become an identity. And that's fundamentally catapulted this category into a different league versus, let's say, a decade back.
How has this shift now changed what consumers are expecting from brands, right? And looking at that, now Adidas is, of course, one of the world's biggest brands in the sports industry. But how about now Chinese brands also that came up, right? Do they understand the Chinese consumer better, or why are they so successful in recent years?
Yeah, I think it's a double-edged, two-layered question, right? Twin-layered question. So let me answer both. Firstly, about how did brands approach it in general. Like I said, once sport has transcended from being a habit into identity, what became very, very important is you're just not selling products, right? You're almost selling experiences. Because it is almost a given that you need to have a great product to begin with. And that's where, honestly speaking, the local brands help dial up the whole market. No longer, especially since COVID, or especially since 2020, you have significant differences in terms of the product that either a big global brand offers, or let's say a strong, hungry local brand like a Li-Ning or Anta offered. So the product probably was, again, you will of course have some extremely loyal people saying, my product can offer 2% extra cushioning, or my product has that technology which might give you 2.5% extra lift. But at a large consumer level, this seemed to be an apparent parity at a product level. What differentiated was how was the product being communicated as an experience, B, as a localized storytelling, and most importantly, how did it translate into locally relevant consumer insight? And that's where I think we have to give credit to the local brands of doing some fantastic job in the years following COVID. They've literally dialed up the consumer experience, dialed up the storytelling, how they translated product from a simple technical fact into a consumer-based insight. That helped grow the whole industry. That probably was the trigger point where now here we are looking at a product with a healthy mix of global brands or local brands, but almost everyone operating as a sport brand to attract the Chinese consumer.
So if you want to attract the Chinese consumers, you need to do digital marketing and you need to take care of the digital platforms. And it's so special in China. So what's your take? Why is the digital consumption in China so unique, or what makes it so unique?
Big question. Again, thanks, Thomas. There is obviously so much literature available, and I'm sure most of the listeners of this podcast are bored of reading documents saying why is China unique. The most obvious one people talk about, China has got different platforms, right? China has got a Tmall while the West doesn't have a Tmall, or China has China ecosystems. But if you ask me fundamentally, the difference in China is how the consumer has probably gone digital, not as a channel, but as a behavior. And what do I mean by saying that? The West, probably people have migrated to digital, and people still see digital as a channel. They were legacy, let's say, offline consumers at one point. In the recent years, they've moved from offline to digital as a channel. However, in China, there is a generation of people who have just leapfrogged and went straight into a mobile phone. They have not seen a desktop era. Like people, I'm sure, we have seen a modem era. We knew by the sound if we connected to the internet. But the vast generation of Chinese have not seen this. They've leapfrogged and went straight into a digital era. So for them, digital is not a challenge. It's not a channel. It's a lifestyle. They spend 5 hours on their mobile phone. Their 5 hours are split between ecosystems, and this is a word which will keep coming up. There's a world ecosystem of a platform, let's say like a Tmall ecosystem or a WeChat ecosystem. Douyin is creating one, but they have grown up living that. So that's the fundamental difference. Riding on that fundamental difference of digital being a way of life, they've got used to speed of service. They've literally, again, I've lived 10 years. I struggle when I go back to Germany or somewhere saying, hey, why does it take so long to deliver? I'm obsessed with 15-minute delivery. You can get cocktails for delivery, for crying out loud in Shanghai, right? You run out of gin tonics in the evening, you get cocktails delivered home. But this is what Chinese consumers have almost made into a baseline, right? Speed of delivery is no longer a USP. It's a prerequisite to be operating in that space. Thirdly, which they probably don't realize, they've almost got used to being treated, personalized by each of these ecosystems. They don't know this, but they've been used to this. They only see what they prefer. Of course, behind the scenes, there's a lot of work that the platforms are doing well, but these three things fundamentally are driving the Chinese behavior. They've got used to living digitally. They've got used to the speed and the agility as a prerequisite. And most importantly, they've been treated with the very significant personalized experiences by each of these ecosystems. And that probably is the key differences for me between a Chinese digital consumer versus a German digital consumer.
Yeah, and talking about the digital ecosystems and platforms that you mentioned, right? I myself, I've experienced it here in China also, let's say from 2015 to 2020 and 2020 to 2025. I think that's 2 very different 5 years, right?
Yeah.
And you said you brought the business to over $1 billion within 5 years. That's tremendous. And then what I would like to know is how has it developed, and what kind of, how did it change in terms of the significance of each individual platform?
Yeah.
For example, 2015 to 2020, maybe Tmall was the dominant one, right? And it was sufficient to play only on Tmall. Mm-hmm. But then from 2020 onwards, a lot of things have changed. So how was it from your perception? How did the kind of market shares and the revenues on the channels for you have split?
Yeah. Again, I would, at the risk of being biased by one industry, because I've worked in the sports and apparel industry we can try and extrapolate this to overall platforms. But yes, you're absolutely right, Damian. The Chinese ecosystem back in 2015 or 2016 where it came in was predominantly dominated by one, Tmall Taobao, and immediately followed by JD, right? And each one of them represented strength in certain categories. Like even a layman would say JD was back in the day was strong in electronics, while Tmall was stronger in, let's say, apparel, clothing, sporting goods, etc., etc. And these two were the probably two largest players. You still had other players like VIP or targeting different kind of consumers, reaching some share. But from the numbers I remember, these top two platforms clearly controlled almost 70 to 75% of B2C consumer market in the key categories that we talk about. Yes, COVID happened, 2020, which is when COVID hit globally, when China was still sort of okay, but innovation was constantly happening. Again, it is no surprise. The baby steps of content marketing, live streaming marketing probably started around that time. They were present, but they absolutely catapulted post that, right? When people were started locked down, people started consuming a lot more of content, spending a lot more of time on mobile phones. That's probably was a trigger point for the next fastest moving ecosystem of Douyin we talked about. Now, I remember vividly in my role, we had that question: should we be the first brand to go into a newly emerging live streaming commerce platform? The Westerner in most of us, or because I was working in the past, was like, this reminds me of teleshopping network. Why would you want to go there? It's loud. It's a teleshopping network kind of a commerce. Would you want to go there? But then it showed enough signals, because it was not just commerce, but it was content being consumed by people, skipping the whole process of click to path purchase. I know I'm getting technical, but the discovery was happening on this channel. The interest generation was happening on this. So almost all parts of the funnel were being consumed on this particular channel, and we felt maybe it's worth a chance. And yes, in no time, this expanded into probably almost a quarter of our business, and it continues to be probably the fastest growing, profitability we talk at a later stage, but fastest growing platform, which has fundamentally disrupted the B2C consumer online marketplace in China. So and it's reached a scale where I think Douyin is probably overtaken JD as well now. And it's opened up a brand new category of live streaming commerce, which eventually resulted in other platforms slowly opening up, other social marketing platforms that are opening up. And that's what fundamentally were two periods, I would say, as periods of pre-COVID and non-COVID. And answering your second question, Damian, on what it meant for Adidas. Yes, our first period of 5 years was a rapid growth. It was about building China for China, right? Solutions. It was a growth strategy. Overnight, our business was halved. And that for us is a good introspection point. And we had to ask ourselves, it didn't mean the business wouldn't grow, but the business growth subsequently after COVID was of different dimension. Most brands had a lot of inventory. The marketplace went a lot more promotional. The pressures were on profitability, coupled with the rapid emergence of Douyin, which was also initially, and it's still by and large, a bit more promotional than before. The focus for the companies changed, and that changed for us too. How did we rebuild our overall digital business post-COVID? How do we start focusing on profitability instead of just top-line growth? How do we start playing on costs from having significant fixed costs versus a balanced variable cost model? Was, I would say, our chapter 2 subsequent to COVID. And I'm happy to say, at least as the company that I work for, we successfully grew in the first phase, we rebuilt in the second phase, and I think here we are at a stage where I can proudly say most brands that I know of are at least turned the corner and gone back to pre-COVID levels of profitability, if not slightly better than that.
So what's very interesting, you already told us that you work across different cultures, across different continents. For you, what is the biggest difference for a digital strategy in China and in Europe? Because we know that China is like already living in the future if you see it from an European view, right?
That's a good question, Thomas. Firstly, I think, and I want to super simplify this because I think there's so much material for people to get bored out of consulting jargon. I think, put it simply, if I were to do a digital strategy for back in Europe, it almost sounded like a channel strategy. Like, what's your strategy for your .com? What's your strategy for your app? And how do you grow your .com or app with a Facebook strategy or an Instagram strategy? So you almost treated each one of the components of the funnel, so to speak, from interest to social to the commerce, as individual silos or channels. And if you compare that to China, I think it's not a question of do you have a digital strategy? Do you have a strategy that is rooted and founded in the digital space of China? So it turns on its head. And that probably for me is a fundamental but a huge difference between how we can approach these two markets, if I answered your question.
And now, talking about differences in the markets or how you approach them.
Yeah.
So I'm running an e-commerce company, right, in the TP. Thomas is a social media celebrity and influencer himself in China. What I see, or what I feel at least, is that in China, many and much more companies, I think, compared to looking at the European market, work with partners.
Yeah.
Right? So you almost need to work with TPs, Tmall partners or DPs for Douyin. What is your perspective on that? And what role do these agencies, TPs, DPs play in your strategy? And also, how have you used them at Adidas?
A great question, Damien. Again, at the risk of saying something, I just want to say at the outset, I don't think one solution applies for all, right? That the answer to that question is highly variable and dependent on A, the brand, the stage at which it is, both globally and its ambition in China. B, the category that the brand is present in. And the balance between the investment that the brand aspires to make in China versus the returns expected. And let me tell you why I say that, because this can't be one shoe fits all. If it's a small to medium enterprise, a European enterprise, which aspires to have a very lean presence in China and is looking at a 2 to 3 year old expansion or incubation of online business without necessarily incurring huge amount of fixed cost, I think it's perfectly all right and okay to operate with partners. And I'll hit a pause on using the traditional legacy TP and DP, but it's perfectly legit and okay to work with partners who will help build, scale, and establish your business for the next 2 years. And then you, as a medium small brand, give yourself the opportunity to assess, should you insource it after 2-3 years? I said I'll park the whole concept of TP and DP, right? So that itself has changed significantly over a period of time in my personal experience. The legacy TPs that we talked about, and I think we all know the big names that we talked about, they were almost existed in this marketplace too, because they had the keys to the unlock of the platforms. So no brand could operate on these platforms without these middle layer, which was like operators. And they helped these brands to be present on each one of these platforms, be it Tmall, be it JD, or in the current context, Douyin. This was, how do I say, the iteration 1.2 of the TPs or DPs. But I think that industry has to innovate itself. So if you ask me, Damien, what's my personal outlook for this TP/DP industry, this has to go beyond the 1.0 version, because no longer are these brands looking at just partners to publish their products. They're looking at brands who A, share the vision, B, understand the platform better, if not the same as the brands, and C, are willing to be partners in the growth, in the risks, and the rewards. So, and all this by constantly innovating. So I think there's a white space, which personally, and it's no surprise that you know that I am going to move on from my 24 years of Adidas experience. Personally, this space of how do each one of these enterprises innovate to offer a proposition to brands to be able to partner and build businesses in China is a space which I think these partners which have to get into.
Yeah, that's very interesting. And you already talked about the consumers, and I see ourselves, even we are foreigners, also part of the Chinese consumer group, because we live here. We have the same or similar consumption habits like the Chinese ones, and we are all kind of spoiled already.
Yeah.
So, what is, in your opinion, what distinguishes Chinese digital consumers from European ones?
I think we spoke broadly about this past, right? But let me add some weight to what I just said, right? Again, like I said, it's not a surprise. The platform and the ecosystems are different. Well-known, established fact. Second, speed is a given. Prerequisite is a given. But what we have not spoken before is the path to purchase, or how Chinese consumers are ending up purchasing. That's fundamentally different. Again, this is where the role of content is coming in. This is where the role of storytelling from each of the brands is coming in. This is where this whole brand new, or not brand new, social commerce that, let's say, someone like a Xiaongshu is absolutely enabling brands to unlock. What do I mean by that? So if you go in Germany and you open a website, you probably will focus almost all your attention on how your homepage looks, right? So you would want to do this well. You'd want to use your insights, do a masthead, do a features. You'll probably do some AI-enabled recommendations, all homepage based. Guess what percentage of people on Tmall enter a brand through a homepage? Exactly. So it's almost...
I just made the zero sign because you didn't see it.
It's almost negligible.
Right.
Vast majority of the people access the brand through a product page. So that means that's a fundamental change in how people are exposing to the brands. So you immediately see the product. So you're expecting to see the experience. You're expecting to see the story, the recommendation, the context, the background, the interest, and the appeal to add to cart and purchase, all in a product page. And I probably cannot make it even more simpler than this. This is where the difference starts. This is where the difference exists. And this is amplified by the current content consumption and social trends that are probably thriving in China.
Yeah, and talking about trends, everyone since a couple of years, right? People are talking about AI.
Yeah.
Everyone knows the mainstream tools, right? But to what extent are they actually and have actually been used in companies like Adidas, in big corporations in China, in e-commerce?
Great question. I mean, I think this is, again, one of my personal favorite topics. And I hope people do more. So to answer your question, to what extent, I wish it's more. And I hope it's more. There are two reasons in my current assessment why most big companies are not using AI or even generative AI to its maximum use cases. Probably they would use it still for changing the background of an image or using AI as part of one of their partners or customer service agents automations or chat automations, very, very primitive Gen AI use cases. But I think there is an opportunity there. And that's where probably medium to low scale businesses will probably disrupt the industry, because big brands have big budgets still. There are big ships who are probably still and they're comfortable in using and staying away from AI because it's something unknown. They have big, large teams. They have A grade 6-star TPs. They have the biggest DPs. They probably don't have to innovate. They probably don't have to re-engineer the processes. But successful and hungry firms, and I firmly believe in this, have to get there sooner or faster. And personally for me, this is a space I think will fundamentally disrupt in China in the next cycle. There'll be two areas where I think China will probably be at the forefront of innovation. One is AI and its use cases going up the value stream, much more than just analytics or just marketing. Two, I also think content and social commerce is probably going to the next level of sophistication. But yes, exciting times and absolutely the right time and the right place to be here, which is Shanghai, China.
Yeah, we think the same. So is there anything else beside AI in terms of technological or cultural trends where you think with your decades of experience in this area that will shape the Chinese market in the coming years?
Like I said, of course, one is AI. There's a space which a lot was spoken about, but somehow has not seen consumer facing AR and VR. We've not seen too much of, because I can correlate consumers demanding more experience-based inspiration. Augmented reality has not really penetrated yet. But don't be surprised, these kind of innovations probably are being incubated in some platform, will be rolled out at the speed of light before we blink and miss. So I think that's elevated, enhanced experiences with tools that we know, and tools that probably are being incubated somewhere in Shenzhen is probably the second stream. I think there could be an innovation. Third, yet there is this whole longevity and is a big topic in China. You know that, right? Everyone talks about it. So sports tech, we've not seen too much of it, right? So we've not seen the latest on what's on wearables and sports tech yet. I could see some action there because of this whole push towards longevity and health drive that not just is happening at a consumer level, but there's a huge emphasis from the government side on this. I expect some work on that. But yes, I definitely think there is a huge amount of inspiration and innovation that's in front of us in China, which probably will be incubated here, will be rolled out. I always had this saying in my adidas times that China is probably behind a firewall, but is almost always ahead of the curve. And that probably is what we're looking at.
Sri, we think this was a perfect ending to say being in Shanghai right now is a good thing. Yeah. And do you have anything that you would love to share with everyone who's listening and said, if you want to be on top on the game, you have to look at this?
Yep, it's a great sign off, I guess. No, I think my advice to anyone, firstly, don't make the mistake of thinking, don't try and copy paste what's global into China. So don't make the mistake of thinking Instagram means WeChat or Pinterest means Xiaohongshu. Like they could be loose connections but these are ecosystems which are so mature, so fully defined, that the only way to answer is don't try and recreate that. Saying, I want to replicate a European app into a China WeChat. That's a wrong strategy. If you have interest in China, try and identify what is right China for China. That will be my first advice. Second, if there's a market that pioneers ease of operating, if there's a market that has enough infrastructure, partners, that makes it easy to try and launch, that's probably China. So don't be afraid. There are enough experts in this marketplace, and you guys are one, to help you enable that. So come to China. It is still a growth-driven market. Again, I know it's something that's completely irrelevant to what we just spoke about. We were talking about before the podcast. It's a market which can give a small spark like Labubu toys. It's a small idea somewhere in Beijing as a global phenomenon. So the opportunity that China represents is much more than most people are seeing. So I would say come, explore, join this digital journey. I myself have, after 24 years, have decided to say goodbye to adidas and jump onto this innovation stream. I am excited to see what's next on innovation in China. And I think that's what all brands should be looking at.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. We totally agree. Come and join the journey. That's the best advice ever. Now it's visa-free for a lot of countries. So come here, have a look at yourself. And we are very grateful for all the insights, Sri. And we wish you all the best on your new endeavor. And we are very sure that we will talk to you again in a couple of years, and we'll see what new learnings you have and what new successes.
Absolutely, and look forward. Thomas and Damien, this was an absolute pleasure. I know this is a big topic. We could easily have branched off into several micro streams, but I hope I could give some sort of inspiration to people who look at China as an opportunity. I hope I could give a language which was simpler to understand instead of using my jargon. And I hope there is someone out there listening who says, let's go and try China.
Perfect. 100% agree, Sri. Thank you very much.